Rivals of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are joining forces to try and oust him from his position of power. Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid have until midnight to complete a deal where each would serve 2 years as prime minister in a rotation. If they are able to wrap up the deal, it could end the record-setting tenure of Netanyahu, who has served as prime minister for the past 12 years. If not, Israelis will head to the polls yet again for a 5th time in 2 years. For more on this, I want to bring in George Birnbaum. He's a former chief of staff for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and is currently chief strategist and pollster for Naftali Bennett. George, welcome. Great to have you with us. So do you think we've come to the end of a long road, that this could be the swan song, for the record-setting tenure of Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think it looks like that may well be the case. I was actually part of the team that brought Netanyahu to power 25 years ago in 1996, and now it looks like this might be the end of this tenure. It doesn't mean it's the final tenure for Netanyahu, but certainly we're very close to at least a new prime minister taking office.
So you work currently with Naftali Bennett. Tell us about him. What will he be like if he becomes prime minister? What will be the most sort of obvious changes between his administration and the previous?
Well, it's going to be interesting because his administration will be made up of a coalition that really crosses the Israeli political spectrum, from right to left, to actually having Israeli Arabs in the coalition. So it'll look very different, and it will have to act very different, because in order to keep this coalition together, they will have to find unity on topics that ordinarily they would not have unity on. Naftali, I've known Naftali for a little more than 15 years. He's a very thoughtful individual. He kind of has lived the Israeli version of the American dream. His parents immigrated to Israel from America. He served in the Israeli military, became an officer, went into high tech, became a multimillionaire, then went into public service. He really does put Israel first. In other words, when you think about the type of leadership it takes for a guy like Naftali Bennett, who on the political spectrum is probably right of Benjamin Netanyahu, forming a coalition government with very left of center political parties as well as the Arab political party at the cost of his political base is really striking, and I think a sign of the risks he's willing to take for the state of Israel and for the Jewish people.
That is a diverse coalition for sure. And now, as you know, Israel has held 4 elections in 2 years. What is your sense that people there want to see happen? I mean, the fact that there hasn't been, a groundswell around any particular candidate, what does that indicate to you?
Well, the state of Israel, in terms of the voting public, has always been very split, but they've usually been split among different dividing lines. Sometimes it was peace versus security, or secular versus religious. This last election really came down to a anti-Bibi and pro-Bibi vote, pro-Netanyahu, anti-Netanyahu, with even the anti-Netanyahu vote being split between those who just didn't like him and those on the right who said, well, he's been a good leader, but it's time for new leadership. So you're really seeing a change, and sure, there's election fatigue among the Israeli public. It's tiresome. It costs money to the taxpayers of Israel. But also, it's not good for domestic policy or for international policy. Continuity of policy, continuity of leadership. When a foreign minister of Israel is dealing with secretaries of state from around the world, it's important that the secretaries of state from around the world know that this is the policy that's going to be in place for the next 4, 5, 6 years. That really hasn't occurred over the past 2 years. And so I think there'll be lots of changes, but I hope the most important change that will occur will be a sense of continuity in terms of policy, both in Israel and geopolitically.
And how do you foresee a potential end to Netanyahu's rule affecting U.S.-Israeli relations?
Well, the U.S.-Israeli relationship has always been strong. It's sometimes had more ups and sometimes had some downs, but it's always been a strong relationship. And I don't see there being any kind of fall off in that relationship. In fact, it might get even a little stronger, given the sense that there was a little bit of bad blood between the Obama administration and Netanyahu, and Joe Biden, President Biden, is certainly, coming out of the Obama administration in terms of foreign policy as far as Israelis are concerned. So there may be a breath of fresh air in terms of that relationship. But I will say that Israel has always maintained that regardless of who the prime minister is and regardless of who the president of the United States is, it's important to nurture and foster that relationship. And I certainly see that continuing under a Bennett administration in Israel.
George Birnbaum, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your perspective.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.